Let's go into Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas. He is speaking about those new updated COVID restrictions.
Kansas City guidelines. And since we've issued those guidelines, which started with a 10 p.m. curfew, reduced capacity, approvals of event sizes through the health department, we've seen a gradual decline in COVID-19 cases. And indeed, COVID-19 cases and deaths in Kansas City have been trending downward for the past 10 weeks. The 7-day average for new cases this week in the Kansas City metro was 210. 1 week ago, the average was 252. 2 weeks ago, the average was 424. In Kansas City, the 7-day average for new cases was 40. 1 week ago, the average was 78, and 2 weeks ago, it was 103. To compare what we're seeing in Kansas City, Missouri versus our region, the 7-day average is 40 in KCMO, 210 for the entire region. There have been many that either through litigation, political activity, or others have challenged Kansas City's guidelines. But we've known all along that Kansas City's guidelines have kept people safer, it's made Kansas Cityans safer, and it's made our region safer. Our guidelines were effective, cases are going down, and now we're working on vaccine distribution in our city. When we announced that restaurants must close early and that all events were requiring approval from the Kansas City Health Department, we were working to make sure that we would avoid a devastating surge as it related to holidays and COVID-19 hospitalizations. We've gotten through Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Chiefs Super Bowl run, and we're proud of the fact that our stricter regulations made sure that our region stayed safer. We said then that these restrictions were meant to get us through a very tough moment, and they did. And because cases are hovering right below where they were in early October, we today are announcing updated guidelines consistent with the guidelines as they existed in October. Importantly, however, cases were on the incline headed into the holiday season. Today, cases are on a steady decline due to vigilant mitigation and vaccination efforts, and we'll continue that work now. Our updated guidelines, which will go into effect at 10 o'clock tonight, include the following. Restaurants, bars, and taverns may resume operating according to their permitted hours and no longer need to close to in-person service at midnight. Those establishments must also continue to require masks and allow for 6-foot social distancing between parties. All attendees and staff of events, no matter the size, must follow masking and social distancing requirements. It is no longer required that they submit their mitigation plans to the Kansas City Health Department, although the Health Department will remain available for consultation to ensure safety at those events. And provided that all attendees follow mask and social distancing guidelines, there is no upper limit on gathering sizes. Guidelines that remain unchanged in Kansas City. Masks must be worn in all indoor spaces with more than one person per room, and all outdoor spaces where social distancing cannot be maintained. Establishments must also continue to require masks and allow for 6 feet of social distancing between parties. So, for example, at a restaurant between the different parties. Indoor and outdoor patrons at facilities where food or drink is served for on-site consumption, including event spaces, must still be seated and masked at all times except when actively eating or drinking. And business and event operators, importantly, as we saw from the Disney on Ice incident, must report any known COVID-19 cases among staff or patrons to the Kansas City Health Department. Now, a few updates on the vaccine rollout, and our next steps. At the start of this week, 1,115,000 first and second dose vaccines had been shipped to Missouri. Of those doses, 79% had been administered. As of this week, however, only 7.8% of the Jackson County population, for example, has been vaccinated, which falls below the statewide average of 10.9% of Missourians. We're not given Kansas City specific numbers, but we understand that we're not where we need to be in terms of vaccines that we've received and vaccines that we've been able to administer. The vaccine task force that I appointed last month is already creating a system to share sign-up data access across the various healthcare institutions in our city. On our vaccine task force, as you may remember, are several healthcare institutions, Truman Medical Centers, St. Luke's, Research, HCA Midwest more broadly, Swope Health Services, Kansas City's Health Department, and our friends at Burns & McDonnell. Our shared access and our shared data is part of an innovative partnership that we're building to get thousands more vaccines to Kansas City, with particular emphasis on our at-risk teachers. So hopefully we can get our students back to school more quickly. We will have more details to announce next week about an innovative partnership that we have with vaccine recipients so that we can find an opportunity to get vaccines in the arms of Kansas Cityans more aggressively. The task force has already done great work connecting institutions to the public. For example, St. Luke's had extra vaccines, so we connected them with Samuel Rogers Health Center in the northeast of Kansas City to distribute and ensure that no vaccines go to waste. Research Medical Center had extra vaccines, so our vaccine task force connected them with Swope Health Services in the core of our city to ensure that no vaccines went to waste. We're proud of that collaboration, and that's exactly what the Vaccine Task Force was created for, to make sure that just because our vaccines, and it's been a decision of the governor of Missouri, particularly in the cities, to distribute vaccines to healthcare institutions, we're making sure that just because they go perhaps to a major hospital.
Now, we just heard from Mayor Quinton Lucas there. He says that cases in the Kansas City area are trending down, and he's given some new updated guidelines that go into effect tonight at 10 p.m. He says restaurants are permitted to go back to normal hours. They no longer need to close at midnight, but mask and social distancing will still need to be required. And as for those larger events, staff and attendees both need to have their mask and do the social distancing, but there will be no limit on gathering sizes. Now, masks must still be worn in all indoor spaces and outdoor spaces where you cannot social distance. We will hear much more from Mayor Quinton Lucas later today on KCTV 5 News at 4.